just right.
Is this the real me?
Don't you think it's time things were different?
Hello.
I'm willing to go further than anyone.
I go to America!
Do I have your attention?
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Alex, your co-host for today. Quick few facts about myself. I'm head of product for a really cool feature at Prime Video called X-Ray, specifically focused on X-Ray for live sports, so delivering things like live stats, highlights, play-by-play analysis to fans while they watch sports like Thursday Night Football. I've been at Amazon for coming up on 10 years, though I can still remember my first day like it was yesterday. And I am based in Seattle. I'm going to pass it over to my co-host, Carlo, to give his intro.
Hey, Alex. So, hi, everyone. I'm Carlo Frem. I head up the European social media team. I've been at Amazon for about 6 years, most of my time in Prime Video. And my team is essentially responsible for trying to drive conversation around some of our big shows and delighting our fans. It's really great to have you all here. This is our first episode of this new series called The Real Deal. So Alex and I are going to be talking to lots of different people from all over Prime Video and at Amazon Studios just to get a sense of, what is it like to be behind the scenes creating some of these amazing shows, movies, live sports, tech like X-Ray. So it's a new show. We really would value some of your feedback as you go. So please make sure that it's interactive. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your comments are below. And yeah, we're going to, we really hope that it's going to be helpful for you all. And without further ado, Alex, let's jump in and invite the rest and have them do their intros.
Awesome. Yeah, so today we have several guests from across Prime Video and studios, like Carlo mentioned. Thanks to the audience who submitted pre-submitted questions. Carlo and I also have created some questions for the panel. And as Carlo mentioned, don't hesitate to pop a question in Twitch chat as well. So let's just jump right in, get started with a quick lightning round of intros. So folks on the panel, please introduce yourselves. And also we have a fun question, which is, if you could be in any reality show, which one would you pick and why? So Anne, let's start with you.
Hey guys, my name is Anne. I've been at Prime Video for 6 years, which it feels longer and shorter at the same time. I'm a marketing/program manager, and during my time I've worked in Germany, in Japan, and I'm now in a global role. And I get to look after all our local productions, so anything, any original that's not US based, and find global audiences for them. So I work with 15 territories, marketing studios. Really exciting job I have, the best one, I think. The reality TV, I thought the British Bake Off, but honestly, I think it's Love Island because I really need a vacation. And that seems to be the only way to get it these days, eh? So yeah, I'll take Love Island.
That's a great one, Anne.
That's so funny. There are other stresses, I think, that come with that, but I agree with the vacation piece.
Nice house, cool.
Awesome. All right, Charlie, you're up next.
Hey guys, Charlie Neiman. I am the head of sports partnerships here at Prime Video. I've been at Amazon and Prime Video 5 years, also feels shorter and longer. My team is responsible for bringing live and on-demand sports programming to our customers around the world. I would say I'm going to go, this show's not currently on TV, so apologize, or digital, but American Gladiators was something I always, as a kid, really wanted to participate in. So
sorry for the ignorant.
Think about it as it's a reality show where you basically go try to compete against what looked like bodybuilders and former Olympic athletes at random athletic or gaming activities. So think standing on a log. Yeah, trying to fight with a, and then you get a cash prize or a championship if you win. So that's my, that was my choice.
Good one, Charlie.
Awesome. Polo, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Falu. I've been at Amazon for 4.5 years now, be 5 years in August, which has flown by crazy fast. I am a senior brand manager within Prime Video for US global originals and worldwide exclusives. So I basically come up with super cool marketing campaigns to launch those shows in Europe. I don't think I can beat either of those reality TV shows, and it might be a bit random. But if I was going to be on a reality TV show, I would like to be on P. Diddy's Making the Band, where he
good one.
Yeah. Where he was putting together Day 26. Because
Yes.
I would like to sing and dance in Day 26. So there you go.
Amazing.
I just like to point out so far that like these all things are possible. Charlie, we can put you in gear and like have you, fight a dummy.
I'm ready.
We can have you sing and dance, and we can send you to a beach. Like these are all within the realm of reality, which is the point, I guess. So
We have Love Island in France. I'm just waiting for the callback, honestly.
that's right. We'll keep it in mind. All right, Lucy, last but not least.
Hey everybody, I'm Lucy Huang. I'm a senior production executive at Amazon Studios. I work on the US scripted content team. And so we are responsible for, in a very narrow way, trying to get our shows on budget and on schedule delivered to customers. And so our team covers shows like Jack Ryan, The Boys, Maisel, Modern Love, Transparent, Mozart in the Jungle. And I've been at Amazon for 5.5 years, and I'm based out of Culver City, California.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. And hey, before we jump
reality,
off. Sorry. Go ahead, Lucy.
Sorry, I forgot. I got to get mine in. So I, in the pandemic, discovered this obscure repair show called The Repair Shop from Britain, and people bring in heirlooms and disrepair, and you have all these professional craftsmen and trades, woodworking, fabrics, and upholsterers and watchmakers, and they restore these heirlooms. And I think there's something about people fixing things for other people and fixing things and watching that during the pandemic that has been really appealing to me. So I would like to be somebody who fixes somebody's thing on The Repair Shop.
That's a great one, Lucy. And I agree with you. Such a pandemic mood. Alex, what about you?
That's I thought you might pass it to me. My answer is without a doubt Selling Sunset, which I'm surprised nobody else mentioned. But one, I choose that because one, like, who doesn't want to like drive around LA and like hang out in the nicest houses with celebrities? But I also just want to like know if the drama is real. So I feel like if I were there, I would get the inside scoop. So I definitely spent like days Googling like what's the truth, like who is really like this after I watched that show. So that's why I choose that. How about you, Carlo?
I hate to be such a stereotype, but I would love to be in Queer Eye. I'm definitely that kind of person who likes to, give my friends makeovers and things like that. So yeah, I feel like, if my job at Amazon ever ends, I'll try to get on that show at some point. Cool.
I love it.
Cool. Well, thank you all so much for your lovely intros. And now we're going to move into some of the questions that were pre-submitted by some of the people. And we got, interestingly, a lot of questions around our culture, right? I think Amazon is known for having what we like to call a peculiar culture. It's a little strange. We're very transparent about it. We talk a lot in particular about our leadership principles, which are these set of rules on how Amazonians should be conducting themselves, and all of our interviews are based around the leadership principles, and so a lot of people are very, very curious about them. And so I wanted to start off by talking about the leadership principles first and foremost. So I would really love to know, all of you, like, what has been your experience with the leadership principles as you joined Amazon? Like, I know that a lot of companies have similar things, but what has been your experience within Amazon particularly? And I'm going to start off with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do really live our culture. I realized that both during the interview, and I do a lot of hiring now, and so I think it's just making sure that everyone is on the same page and to how we approach things. And I do like that about Amazon. I mean, there's a lot of great things here. Yeah, I think, I personally worked across so many different teams. Like, I've worked in Germany, I've worked in Japan, I now work with all the territories, and I do think culture is what we have in common. And I think that makes that like cross-team and cross-country collaboration possible and makes it easy and smooth.
Agreed. It's very much a common language, and particularly I think when you work across so many different teams at Amazon, because we do so much from retail to Alexa to music to Prime Video, it actually gives all these very different teams common language, which is helpful. And we have tons of leadership principles. And like, which one's your favorite, or which one really sticks out for you?
Yeah, I like learning, be curious. I just enjoy learning, and I think that's something that you have to do every day at Amazon, because most people around me are smarter than me, and they teach me things all the time. And so I constantly have to step up and keep up. But it also means that I got to do a lot of fun stuff, because people do believe that you can learn. And so I've done a multitude of jobs that I maybe wasn't necessarily 100% qualified for, but because I know how to approach things, I ramped up within a short time, and they just let me explore that. And I love that.
Yeah. Hey, that's a great one. We're always learning and trying new things. Like, I think one of the big learning experiences for us as a company has been, launching live sports, right? So we started off as studios, TVs, and movies. So, Charlie, I'm kind of going to pass this one on to you. Like, how have you been embracing the leadership principles to help you navigate this very ambiguous new space for us?
Yeah, look, I think we do live it every day. I would say on the sports side, the two that jump to me are kind of customer obsession and think big. Both of those things, I think, encompass what led us to launch live sports and go after it in such a big way. So from the customer obsession standpoint, we're thinking about how is the live sports experience today? How can we make it better? And what is the content folks love, right? That's sort of the central point. And then you can figure out how to deliver that. And I'm going to think big. I think the exciting part about Amazon is that when we think about attacking a solution for customers, we can think about whatever we want, right? There are sort of no bounds to that. And so it gives us a lot of freedom and I think a lot of creativity to think about what is the right solution and what will customers love, and not think about the competitive landscape or technological restrictions or resources or any of those things. And so I think from the sports side, it's been exciting to be able to actually lean into something big using our leadership principles as the foundation.
Yeah. Customer obsession is such an interesting one that you mentioned, Charlie. Like, I definitely remember reading a lot about it before I joined Amazon and not being sure what to expect. And I was so surprised at how much we talk about doing what's right for the customers. And I remember, one of the shareholder letters that Jeff talked about was around, the best thing about obsessing over customers is that customers are always delightfully unsatisfied with everything you do. And so like, it just keeps you fueled, it keeps you going. And he's like, there's something really wonderful about how easily dissatisfied they are. And it forces us to innovate and raise our bar. And I really love that. Lucy, I'm interested to jump over to you in your space. Like, how did the leadership principles resonate in your world?
I think when I was preparing for my loop and you're going through the leadership principles, and I think as someone, my background prior to coming to Amazon, I was working out in the field as a freelance producer. And I was like, ownership. Well, yeah, because if I have to solve the problems every day, earns trust. Yes, I'm working with producers and talent, and and so I was like, I I was like checking off the boxes. I go, I guess I am kind of Amazonian, and sort of came into the loop, with that. And I think now, having been in my role, I think the leadership principle that resonates the most is earns trust. Our teams, even though we're physical production, we interface with a lot of external partners, including the content creators, including talent, and all of the crew and the staff. And so, if you think about working cross-functionally, there's a huge external component of that to my role. And it also applies internally. So, I kind of see myself in terms of how I approach my role as sort of a in-house producer, where I am trying to drive and facilitate the shows to navigate the Amazon peculiar culture. Sometimes, sometimes it doesn't necessarily align with how production or entertainment works. So that's always an interesting thing that we have to kind of just get back and forth all the time.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about earns trust, Lucy. It's so important at Amazon. And I think something that's a little counterintuitive is that when we talk about earns trust, we talk a lot about being vocally self-critical, which I find that a lot of new people struggle with at Amazon, because perhaps in other companies that may be perceived as something that you don't do, but actually we try very much to openly talk about mistakes in order to learn from them. And so we always talk about it's not about being right, it's about getting it right. And so having that culture of being vocally self-critical to making sure that you build the trust between teams, because we know that if we're going to mess something up, people will be accountable and they'll own it and they'll get that feedback. Falou, what about you? What is your favorite leadership principle?
I'm going to have to be really boring and go with customer obsession with a hint of delivers results, mainly because in my role, I have to obsess about the customer, because if I don't, I won't understand why they love the piece of content that I'm trying to market to them. So, I may not like a particular film or TV show. It might not be my particular taste, but by obsessing about the customer and getting my walking in their shoes, I can find out why they love something, and then I can use those elements to dial up my campaign and really connect with them and excite them, and then obviously deliver results, because if you get that right, you're delivering for both the customer, because you're bringing them content that they didn't even know they loved or that they would love, but you're also delivering for Prime Video and helping us become more and more popular in terms of the entertainment space.
That's a great response, Falou. And do you mind me putting you on the spot there and just asking, do you have a specific example of a time where you think you really did that, where you put yourself in customers' shoes and maybe you learned something that you didn't think you were expecting? I don't know.
Well, there was a movie that I worked on at the end of last year based off of a set of books by an author called Anna Todd. It's the After series. And the first movie after
yes.
had been on Netflix, and we acquired the second film after we collided. So I had to go and watch After, and then I watched After We Collided, and I very quickly determined that I wasn't a fan. But the fan base loved these characters, they loved the books, they were fully invested. And so it took me multiple watches to really start to unpick and understand what it was between the dynamics of the lead characters that really drove this kind of fan love and affection. And as soon as I understood that it was about their unconventional romance. They met in an unconventional way. They were both two different types of people, but that was what united and bonded them, that we realized that the center of our campaign needed to be the talent, and we needed to put them at the forefront. So we jumped onto the HESA, which is the Harden in Tessa hashtag, and we did a load of social stuff. And I'll be honest with you, having watched the film 5 times, I'm now a fan, and I can't wait for the next installment. Don't hate me. Don't at me.
That's great dedication, Falou, that you didn't quite love it at first, but you watched it 5 times to get it right for the customers. Great dedication. Cool. So I think that's it for the first question. Alex, why don't you take on the next one?
Yeah, and by the way, Falu, I think that like you just wrapped like a million different leadership principles in there: ownership, learn and be curious. Like you learned to be curious your way into customer obsession, which is awesome. That's how the leadership principle should work. Yeah, I've got a new question for you all. Pretty straightforward one, but you have to pick. What's the most exciting launch that you've been a part of? And I'm going to lead with Charlie, because Charlie and I have actually worked together on a number of exciting launches, and I want to see if he chooses the same ones that I would choose.
I think I will. I'm going to go. Well, it's going to be a 2-in-1, because I think it's our Thursday Night Football launch in 2017, but it also represented our first big live sports launch. And so to me, it was more than just a single property. It was sort of the culmination of dozens of teams' works coming together to deliver something big for customers. I always look back, like 5 years ago when I got here, we had never streamed live events. And, a year later, or a year and a half later, we were streaming to millions of customers in 200 plus countries, and delivering one of the biggest media properties in the world. And so I think for me, that has to be top of the list. And I think it set the stage for all the things we've been able to do in live sports since then.
That's right. Yeah, and some of that stuff is stuff that I've got to work on, right? So, like, thank you for launching some of that awesome content, especially Thursday Night Football, because that was also the first property that we launched X-Ray on, which, like you just mentioned, paved the way for us to launch this sort of live interactive experience in a number of sports, both within the U.S. and internationally. So, I'm excited with the space. Excited to keep working with you on that as well. Cool. Lucy, how about you? You're in the content space. It's a little different. What's the most exciting thing you've worked on?
I would say Modern Love, and I know it's not the sexiest show. It's not that it doesn't have a lot of stunts. It doesn't have a lot of visual effects, but I think it's speaking to sort of the investment and how long and how difficult it is to have content created. I was involved with the development of the show from the very beginning. So that was back in the summer of 2017, from when the very first scripts came in, collaborating with the creative team, collaborating with producers to figure out how to produce the show with the scripts for the right metrics and all of these things for our customers. And it took a bit of time to find our way to get the tone right with the music and the structure of that show. And so it was an exercise in, patience, but finally when the show delivered, I think that was October 2019. I mean, I would say PR brand marketing did a fantastic job. They converted a storefront in Manhattan into like a museum about love with all these different exhibits. And it was like a living, breathing representation of the show. Season 2 is almost delivered. And, we would have had it out to customers sooner, but we were 1 week out from the start of shooting of season 2 when the global shutdown happened. And so the show went down for 6 months. And we spent that entire time figuring out how to still shoot the show safely with COVID protocols. And then we went back into production in September. It was tough, but we made it. And, we came out on the other side, but I think just and I know that the show did well, that we're developing several international versions of the show in Japan and Mexico. And so I'm really looking forward to see, love is universal, and, we need a lot of that out there. So I'm super excited to see the local originals of that format too.
That's awesome. And Lucy, I've been around working with studios kind of tangentially with you here and there. And I know I learned early on how long it takes to make some of this stuff. And so it's exciting. I'm excited for you that it has finally come to fruition. It's awesome. I'm gonna. There's a question that came in.
Love.
Yeah, right. I think that's like the most meaningful stuff, right? Like stuff that you really care about. We got a question from Twitch chat that I'm going to incorporate into this one, which is, how do you balance giving customers what they want with giving them what they don't know they want yet? Which is, I think, really interesting. So, Anne, in the context of exciting launches you've been a part of? Like, how have you thought about that?
Yeah, I need to tie this up with setting up the stage for Japan, where the market is very different to what we're used to. One of the first thing we did was emphasize with the customer, and we actually went to many of the rental DVD shops that are still around there. Do you guys remember Blockbuster? That's still like the version of that. It's still like at every corner in Japan, and it's so common in their habits that they really didn't want streaming at all. That was something that we, thought would be good for them. And I think what helped us, create a really exciting launch was understanding how could streaming fit into the customer's life. And it turned out to be very different too, in the sense that, Japanese apartments are small. There isn't a big TV in the background like I can see in your place, Alex. In fact, it's all about mobile. And they stream on the go during their commute. They stream on like their tablets at home. It's not like the big cinematic experience that we want, but it's about filling those little spaces in between and creating joy and escapism there. And so for me, the most exciting launch was our mobile program, where that's exactly what we marketed. We used that as an insight, emphasizing with the customer and trying to show how Prime Video can help fill those spaces, rather than pushing something onto them that we knew worked in other markets but really wasn't applicable. And the cutest thing that I remember was one creative approach that we took, where we actually showed bath time, which is so integral to Japan, right? Like family bath time and having that me time in that space, being able to watch Prime Video as part of that. And I that stuck with me. There's other versions that I really love, but that's maybe the cutest one that I've seen.
It's a great one.
That is really sweet.
Hey, Alex, I've got a few thoughts on this question. Do you mind if I just jump in with it? Because
Yeah,
I do think it's a really great question. There's something that Jeff once wrote about in a shareholder letter that I think kind of speaks to this, where he talked about the creation of Alexa. So it's not Prime Video, but it's still related, and I think it's interesting. And he was talking about how you sometimes have to be willing to take risks. Right, and especially when you're inventing new things, because there's no data out there that tells you what people want. And he uses Alexa an example, and he said, if I had commissioned a survey that had asked customers, like, do you want a black box in your kitchen that speaks to you and tells you random fun facts and sets a timer, he basically said, like, I guarantee you everyone would have said no, and we would have made a decision based on a survey to not create something that ended up defining Amazon. And so he used that as an example of, as we grow, we invent, we have to be bold and we have to take big risks. And as long as you set yourself up to fail fast and learn quickly, then it's okay. And so I think we always have to do that. And so we're always thinking, how do we continue to balance the risk taking with things that we know work? And I think live sports is a great example of this. I think there are lots of features and innovations like X-Ray where we are thinking about that. But yeah, it's hard. But I think if you're up for failing and taking the learning, then it works out.
Yeah, testing and learning is really important. You just mentioned X-ray, so it's funny because it's a feature that in the very beginning, we got a lot of feedback that was like, "Why are you covering my screen? Like, what is this?" You fast forward 8 years later, and now people are like, "Where's X-ray? It's not on this title. I need to know who that actor is," or like, "Why is this not available on this live sporting event?" Or like, hey, like we've literally gotten feedback that is like, we come to the service for this. And so sometimes, like you said, you have to test and learn and put things out there. And sometimes you have to wait for people to adapt to things, but you also don't want to push too hard to the point where you're making them very unhappy. So kind of leaving in that flexibility, trying to take two-way doors, not one-way doors, and managing risk, just like you said.
Ooh, what does that mean, Alex? Two-way doors, one-way doors. Who wants to take this?
Sure.
This mean in the world of Amazon?
I could take
Anyone
it.
want to? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, me and Alex can take it together. We can use X-ray. A two-way door and a one-way door. So one-way door is a decision you make, and it's sort of, you can't go back through the other way. So it's once you've decided that, it's sort of, you made the decision for the product, for the customer, and there's no going back. A two-way door is more what I'd call a test and learn, where you can roll something out or try something, but if it doesn't work or you need to adjust it, you have the flexibility to go back through the door. And so, I think a good example of two-way doors, I guess, is some of the things we're doing on X-Ray, right? We are offering stats as part of our live sports experience. And we have a certain set of stats that we've launched with, and we may decide that, hey, we need to add or subtract to those based on customer feedback, but we're able to be flexible in what that offering is. It's not that once we've set our stats line up, that's it forever. And so I think, at least on the sports side, and Alex can talk more to this, but we do a lot of this, of testing and learning what customers like and what's resonating with them.
I think Charlie's sending me a secret message that I need to be more flexible with the stats that we have. No, I'm just kidding. I think a good example of this is, and sort of deeper in my space, is like, when you launch, we launch something like, say, notifications, right? Like we have this experience where we do these live replays or live replays on demand while you're watching, so that, if really awesome, like, play just happened, you can, within like 90 seconds, go find it and watch it as many times as you'd like. And we want customers to be able to find that kind of thing, right? So like we put in these sort of small notifications, and we recognize it's a risk because in a live game, if we're going to be putting notifications on the screen, like that's interrupting the customer's experience. But we're balancing that back to the original question of customer obsession. It's like, well, we think you will really love this feature, and we need to give you a way to be able to discover it. But when we were planning this sort of notification experience, where it's like, all right, a replay has come in, we're going to send you to the CX through this little notification you could click on your screen. We were very careful about how we dialed those up. So we started with only when there's touchdowns. And then we kind of, we limited the amount of time they'd show on screen. And as we discovered that customers were accepting this, we would like slowly increase them. And we always had mechanisms behind the scene to dial down or dial up, right? So we didn't just create this like logic that's like, it's out there. And that's like, oops, the customers don't like it, we can't dial it back, right? So we made it a two-way door for ourselves and for customers. And that's often how we think about the risks that we take.
That's such a great example, Alex. Thanks so much for that. So I'm going to move direction into another question. Something we got a lot of questions about just generally is the topic of diversity and inclusion, which is a great question. So, at Amazon, we say that we want to be customer obsessed. We want to, our mission statement is to be the most customer centric company in the world. And we can't do that if we're not mirroring all of our customers. And our customers are really diverse and all over the world. And to be very vocally self-critical, we haven't done enough in this space yet. We're working on it, but we've been very vocal and transparent about it. And if you're really interested, there have been some public statements made recently in our Day One blog where you can read about where we are right now, where we want to be in a few years' time, and some of the things that we're doing. And we know it's not enough, but it's a step in the right direction. And so I'm super curious to hear from this group, like, what have been your experiences at Amazon, and what do you think? And, how do you think of some of the things that we've committed to, and do we think it's the right direction that we're headed in? So Falu, I haven't heard from you in a while. I'm gonna call on you for this one.
Yeah, sure. So speaking as a Black African man, I can give my perspective. So I'd say that some of the things that we've announced that we want to do are super positive, and they're steps in the right direction. But I think anyone who is looking at diversity and inclusion and thinking that it is literally a light switch, like you can just flick it on and all the problems or all the challenges are solved, it's probably being a little unrealistic. So, this is a road and a journey that we are all on together. And the best thing we can do is we can set out on that journey. Rather than discussing where we're going, we can start to move in the direction of the destination we want to get to. And I feel that that's what we've done as a business. And in terms of, reflecting our customers, I fully believe that great stories and great storytellers can come from anywhere. And they all have one thing in common. They create content that engages and unites people, no matter where those people come from. And as long as we can help those storytellers and we can help those stories be told, we'll continually evolve our DE&I kind of impact and footprint not only within our internal business, but externally as well. And I think that's how we're going to make a difference. That's how we're going to drive change, by making sure that we are showing our customers and reflecting our customers through our staff, and also through the content that we choose to promote to them.
Yeah, that's great, Falu. I particularly love what you said about it's a journey, and it never stops, right? There's no end point, and it's not comfortable, and it's okay that it's not comfortable. And I think we've been trying to do a better job at making sure people understand that, and that there are uncomfortable conversations that you need to go through in order to realize that this is a problem, and it's going to take a long time. So thank you so much for sharing that experience, Lucy.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, one of the things that I believe is that in this space, if we're comfortable, it means we're doing it wrong. Like, we should all be uncomfortable, because it's not comfortable for anybody. But you know what's important? Having those conversations, because having those conversations helps people be seen. And ultimately, that's all we all want, right? We all want to be seen for who we are and appreciated for who we are.
Yeah. I love that. 100% agree, Falu. That's a great. And Lucy, what about you? What have been your experiences? I'm interested to hear from your world in terms of what you see behind the camera and on screen.
Well, speaking of uncomfortable, I think it's probably fairly common knowledge, with all of the things that have emerged. The probably entertainment industry has a lot of work to do. And I think, from studios, this is a super important area that we need to be better at. I know just at a high level, in terms of gender equity, we're a partner with many of the other studios with the Reframe program to, get to 50-50 with gender representation. And then we are also partners in the Array Alliance, which is Ava DuVernay's organization and project to bring more diversity, equity, inclusion behind the camera and in front of the camera. And I think when you're talking about content creation and how long it takes, that I alluded to earlier, is we have stuff in the pipeline where we've actively, when you're putting a show together, casting is not just the people in front of the camera. It's the people that are writing the scripts. And so you have to make sure the people who are creating the content match the creative intent, and the voices kind of align together. And then as you move forward in the process and you start hiring other content creators, the casting of the show starts from like day one, which is another very Amazonian thing. And so I think, we have some content coming up, I think, which reflects stuff that we've been working on for the past few years. The Michael B. Jordan launch of Without Remorse, Them Covenant, which was a series that just launched a couple weeks ago. And we have a lot of collaborations with diverse content creators with projects in development that, haven't been announced, but it is happening. It just takes time to create content and get it out to our customers, but it's a huge priority for us in front and behind the camera.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for that. Thank you so much, Falu and Lucy, for sharing those experiences. It was really interesting. Alex, I know we've got a couple of other coming in. Do you want to take this next one?
Yeah, I want to jump in just on even on this topic, just because I have a perspective on something you mentioned earlier on some of the goals that have been published in the blog or the About Amazon blog. I can tell you when I started here 10 years ago, such a different conversation over the last 10 years. But one of the things that I've learned very early on at Amazon, I think it was in a Jeff shareholder letter as well, was the difference between good intentions and, mechanisms that drive the right outcomes. And I think, for the first time we're seeing, when people, send emails out in support or, put out statements of support, that's like one step. But it's not a mechanism that drives an outcome other than kind of like showing support, right? It's good, but it's like, does it lead to, what we want to happen. And I think that, taking goals is a really good example just throughout Amazon overall as the most like kind of simple mechanism you can take that shows your intention, but it holds you accountable to achieving some desired outcome. And so, it remains to be seen if we hit those, if they end up being the right ones. But I think it does represent a hopeful step to me. So I'm tentatively, sort of excited about that. All right, I do have there is another question here that I'm going to ask y'all, which is, what's your experience working between business or working across business and tech teams on cross-functional projects, realizing that most people here are on the business side of things? So, Charlie, I'm gonna kick it off to you again because I know you've worked with me on projects like this.
Yeah, look, I think the short answer is we work every single day with the product and tech teams, and that's dozens of teams, right? Especially on the live side. If you think about what the end customer is going to see, that's a combination of the content, but also the product experience. And live is unique in that you really have one shot to get it right, right? No one is, you come to an NFL game and you turn it on and there's buffering or you can't access the stream, you don't get a second shot. There's no like VOD to go watch it the next day. And so we spend a ton of time obsessing about what the end experience is, and then working backwards from that to say, here's all the things we have to accomplish with the various product tech teams to deliver that. And I know I keep throwing it back to you, but I think X-Ray is a great example of that, right? We've had to define what we want the customer experience to be from an X-Ray and live sports experience. We've had to figure out, how do you build that? How do you sequence it? How do you phase it? How do you make it a good experience? And there's a lot that goes into it day to day in terms of testing and roadmap planning, et cetera. But we really are one broad team that is working towards what I call like a customer experience vision at the end of the day.
Yeah, your boss in particular does a good job. Marie Donahue does a very good job of always saying like we're all one team. And I believe it. Like it really feels like Charlie and I are in slightly different teams, but we work very closely together. And a lot of the things we build is we try to make it extensible and scalable, but a lot of it is dependent on, constraints or opportunities that we have coming up. From a live content perspective. And Charlie is right. I worked in the movie and TV experience, X-Ray experience for a long time, and live is just a completely different, like you are right. You get one shot to get it right. And it's very hard to test in advance. So that's but it's also one of the things that makes live the funnest to me. Awesome. All right. Falu, how about you? I know that you've worked on, I know you've worked on Magellan and a number of other projects, being here as long as you have. What's your experience working across, tech teams?
The tech teams that we have at Amazon are so smart, so capable, move so quickly that my experience has basically just been trying to keep up with them. So we, when we launched Magellan, which was the project that allowed us to launch primevideo.com, which kind of brought Prime Video to kind of over 200 territories around the world, I was leading an on-device marketing channel called Merchandising. And so we were helping to support the tech teams by populating Prime Video in numerous different languages across all of these territories. And we would feed back to them that there was XYZ problem with the customer UI and that it was a strange customer experience. And, before we'd finished our sentences, they were already talking about 5 or 6 different fixes that would fix the problem, but then also iterate the UI to a point where we would check it all over again. So trying to keep up with them was always a challenge. But as you said, Charlie, we work so closely together and so kind of hand in glove with our tech teams, again, because of those leadership principles, because we always default back to those leadership principles, because everybody is approaching every challenge with one of those principles as their key weapon to kind of overcome that challenge. And so it means that whether you're talking about, stream bufferings or, artwork, if you're relying on leadership principles, you're going to approach them in very similar ways, which means that, again, it makes it so much easier to be one team, and there's never really any kind of friction there's always going to be a little bit of friction when you're working late night on a launch. But there's never any rivalry, never any negative rivalry between the two teams, because we're all pulling in the same direction, utilizing the leadership principles.
Yeah, that's awesome, and our tech teams are very smart, but we definitely, this kind of dovetails with the question that came up with Twitch chat. We all do work together, right? Like if the tech team doesn't have a vision to work with or understand the customer, like what do they build, right? So the question from Twitch chat: how to look at the Prime Video platform through different perspectives and departments and collaborate to its growth and constant upgrade. I'll kind of give my quick perspective on this, which is there's a couple different ways, and I might answer the question a little differently, which is like, how do we, given, Prime Video is made up of different functions and teams and businesses, like how do we all move towards a common goal? On the micro level, within different teams, we do try to create, at least in the organization that I'm in, we try to create structures that allow different business leaders to make their own decisions. Of course, we are guided by our overall goals from Prime Video, which are kind of decided, both bottoms up and top down from the leadership level. And usually we just have very customer obsessed visions about, being a service that customers will love, right? And on the X-ray side, like we get to choose what that means, but of course we collaborate very closely with live sports. Whenever we're entering a new space, like, hey, what do these customers want, right? Because like someone else said earlier, it's not about being right; it's about getting to the right answer. That often means that leadership principle often means that you must work with different groups to determine what do you deliver. Not to mention to deliver it, right? If you're in like marketing and you need tech help, like you can't do it on your own, right? So, and like Lucy said earlier, this is where earns trust comes. And I'm just weaving in the leadership principles because they really are that important in how we operate. But the leadership principles are one thing that I think really keep us kind of moving forward with how we conduct ourselves, but how we make decisions for customers as well. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this one?
I've got a quick one too, Alex, to build on that. I think what's also interesting in this question is you can also interpret it in other Amazon departments. And I think of what we did recently with Michael B. Jordan with the Alexa Super Bowl ad as a great example of us trying to leverage other Amazon teams to go bigger, right? Like we have such a family of different types of products. And so, we obviously had Michael B. Jordan. I think he was, Alexa's new body. It was quite a funny Super Bowl ad. And in the ad, we also referenced the Without Remorse campaign that's also coming out on Prime Video. And so I think that's a really unique and fun thing for customers. And, we're really thinking bigger about how to build out Amazon worlds in a really compelling and entertaining way for customers. And as we've got a few questions and we're getting close to crunch time, I want to make sure that we cover off a few more of these. So I'm going to move away from this topic to another one. And I love this question, and I get asked this question a lot, and I think it's a great one. What is the hardest thing about working at Amazon? It's a great question. And Anne, I'm going to throw this one at you.
Yeah, no, I do get asked that one a lot. Whenever you're in an interview, people sort of ask for the highlights and lowlights. So I think it's a fair one to ask. I think what we just talked about, honestly, the speed and scale of Amazon is the most exciting thing about working here, but it's also the hardest thing on a day-to-day because we move at the speed of a startup and we constantly change things and we constantly innovate, and nothing is set in stone. But it needs to scale to a Fortune 500 company and the customer base that we have. And so you're constantly trying to balance being innovative and flexible and trying new things, but also thinking about like, can we keep this up in the long term, and how do we make that happen so that we actually reach all our customers worldwide and don't build sort of siloed things, siloed campaigns. I think that's the best and the hardest thing at Amazon at the same time.
That's absolutely true. And I often say to people working at Amazon is like going into a shoe store and trying to, you want to basically wear a pair of shoes that are way too big for you, but you buy them anyway and you keep wearing them and it's really uncomfortable. And by the time your foot starts to fit into the shoe, you want another pair of shoes that are 5 times as big, and you're wobbling all over again. It's just that constant, you never quite get comfortable, and there's another big thing that's coming. But hey, the wobbling's fun. So thanks for that. And Lucy, what about you? What do you think is the hardest thing about working for Amazon?
I think sort of taking and echoing some points that Alex and Ann made with scaling and cross-functioning, and is I think when you're working with this many teams, this many partners, and sometimes it's top down, but a lot of times it's bottom up, getting alignment.
Yeah.
Through the leadership principles, getting alignment on the goals and the path forward sometimes can be super difficult because, as Ann said, the finish line is constantly moving. So you have to constantly realign to scale and keep going forward. And so to me, I think that's something that you have to have the willingness and flexibility to sort of work in some ambiguity, but I think that's also allows you a lot of us freedom too as well. So I would say alignment sometimes.
Yeah, Falu, you look like you have something to say.
I do. I think, and this might just be me personally, but working in within our brand team and with other brand managers who are working on other shows, one of the hardest things is just not getting involved in other projects, because there are so many projects going on that are so exciting that you're like, ooh, I want to be part of that. I'll come to that meeting. Ooh, I can. And so I find that saying, I'm just going to focus on these things, very difficult, because it's, as you say, the scale is so big that everything is so exciting. And because we're, as a business, Amazon encourages you to learn and be curious, as Anne said previously, and to go and learn about different things and to contribute, that you can find yourself contributing and learning about so many other different things outside of your, personal responsibilities, that you suddenly find yourself being worn a bit thin. And so saying no is the hardest thing that I find.
It's such a great point, Falu. And I think what also is quite peculiar about Amazon is that we don't get told what to do a lot. Like, we're very, you kind of come in, your leaders will give you tons of background information and they'll tell you what's important. And then it's like, well, off you go. And a lot of new people struggle with this. And like, what am I supposed to do? And it's like, well, you tell us what you think you should be doing. And that's where it's interesting, because then you start to look at all the exciting things. And the question is, well, where can I add most impact? And I often say to my team, like, there's this saying we like to throw around the team, like, drop the kitty. Like, you want to hold so many cute things, and sometimes you just have to drop the kitty to just like make space for something else, and people really struggle with that. So yeah, I hear you. Charlie, what about you? What's the toughest thing working at Amazon?
You actually stole mine, but I'll dovetail off that. I think the ambiguity can be challenging for folks, but I think it's also an opportunity, right? So no one's ever going to, I always tell new hires, like, no one's ever going to come, you're not going to come in every day and say, here are the 10 things you have to do today or this week. There's a much more kind of put on the employee to empower themselves. We are all working towards sort of a grander vision for your team or your product, but how we accomplish that and what you do day to day to actually drive that outcome is oftentimes put on the employee. So I think it's one of the exciting parts of Amazon. I think it's also one of the challenging things, especially for folks who are new to the company.
100% agree. Alex, what do you think? You've been around for a while at Amazon. What's the most challenging thing?
Yeah, I would say the most challenging, I mean, you guys kind of covered a lot of them. The most challenging thing, I think, for most new people are the two things that I heard earlier, which is being able to say no. And I'll admit, when I first started working at Amazon, I was working crazy hours. I was totally intimidated. I was coming from, by way of the Midwest, and I was like, I'm in Seattle with this is where Grey's Anatomy takes place, and there's all these smart people. And I was just like totally, kind of like, I got to work really hard and work a lot of hours. And I think the thing that's not sustainable. And it's not how I like to treat any new employee as well. And the trick that I learned, which is not easy, but it is kind of straightforward, is learn to say no. And it really is, it matters what you pick. Like if you can only do 10, if you have 10 things on your list and you can only do 3 today, the most important decision you can make is like, what are those 3 things? And what are the other 7? And so constantly be able to make decisions and trade-offs and doing that in a way that makes sense for yourself and for customers, but then also letting people know like, hey, I can't do this because there's this other thing. If you need me to do this thing, then I can't do this more important thing, but I only have so many hours in the day. And once I figured out how to do that, I've been here 10 years now, right? And there's a reason that I've been able to sustain my career here. I think that's the hardest thing for new people. I think for people who've been around, now that I've been here a long time, like, I think that, the ambiguity is something that, that's a hard thing that never goes away. Making decisions on behalf of large tech teams that are investing lots of engineering hours, investing lots of marketing dollars, realizing that decisions I'm making as a product leader is like influencing not just customers, but like all these other people. It can weigh sometimes on a person. And so having the conviction for your vision, especially when you don't have data, can be really difficult. It can be very difficult to maintain it, especially if people don't agree with you. But it takes, it's more than just sort of like coming up with an idea and being like, that's what I'm going with. Like you have to build frameworks and even if you don't have data, there has to be a reason that you're doing something. And then you have to have conviction in it. And I think that that's something that only the last, few years have I really learned how to do well. So I think that's the hard thing for folks to do. And the result, if you're not good at that, is that you will just do whatever other people tell you. Because in an ambiguous space, it's easier to just listen to people who you think are smarter than you or have more information than you. But if you have conviction, you can be the leader in your space. And I think that's something that more tenured Amazonians, have to learn.
That's a great one, Alex. Alex, we've got a question around data and Amazon that's quite interesting. Do you want to take this one as the last one because we're running out of time?
The question is, I know data is, this is a submitted question. I know data is so important at Amazon, but how can you frame your creative work or past work where you don't have or can't share metrics on your resume? I know I just kind of gave an answer, which I'll recap, which is like, when you don't have data to tell you, and you had talked about this with Alexa too, when you don't have data, like how do you make decisions? And being vision-led can be ambiguous, but important. But I'm actually going to pass this to Anne. Because I think you had an answer for or you work with metrics quite a bit.
I personally love metrics and I love data, but I do understand not everyone is that way. No, I think what I sometimes tell people in interviews when they struggle to give me an answer to these kind of questions is that data isn't always numbers. It can be customer anecdotes, it can be experience, it can be just looking for different points of view and trying to disprove your own conviction that you have, and just making sure that you're not following blindly the first idea that you're going after. It doesn't have to be a big statistical analysis. It can be all of these things. And I think that's what we love. And honestly, I think we do love that. But yeah, I think there's a balance to be struck there.
I love that, Anne. And there's a great, again, another great story from Jeff around customer anecdotes that we talk a lot about. He says that oftentimes when customer anecdotes and data are in tension or differ, more often than not, it's the customer anecdotes that are right, and we're measuring something wrong or we're looking at it wrong. And so there are all these stories around like, Jeff still reads his email, like jeff@amazon.com, like customers still email him like little anecdotes, like this is bothering me, this isn't working. And he does he gets a lot of emails, but he does take the time to go through some of them. And, people get the famous Jeff ? Emails, like what's going on? He'll send that anecdote to a leader in the business and we'll look into it and we'll see like, well, what drove this? And again, like I've seen this personally as well. Like oftentimes when we see, particularly on social in my space, when we see things happening on social, what people are saying, like that is oftentimes the most valuable data that we can get. And so thank you all so much. I think we're just about to hit 7 p.m. Thank you for the first episode of The Real Deal. Thank you all. Like you were very honest and authentic, and that's exactly what we want this to be. We want it to be a real representation of what it's like working at Amazon. So thank you. Alex, do you have any last words?
Yeah, no, thanks for everyone for coming. Thanks to those who pre-submitted questions and for those who engaged in Twitch chat as well. And thank you to all of our panelists. And thank you, Carlo, as well.
Thank you, Alex, and thank you to all the panelists. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.